Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeff Sternberg from Google Cloud, and I'm joined with Nathan Eaton from NGIS. And today, I think we're going to talk about how Google and NGIS are partnering with Cardo and others to explore the area of CPG and retail, focusing on geospatial analytics. So I'll start off with a quick introduction, and then I'll turn it over to you, Nathan, and then we'll just have a conversation. So. Sounds good. Great. So yeah, my name is Jeff Sternberg. I'm in a group in Google Cloud called the Office of the CTO, or OCTO. And what we do is we do collaborative innovation with some of our key, most strategic, important customers. And we really explore the art of the possible. We think about the emerging themes that are coming up in technology. And we focus as a CTO advisor in many aspects. And engaging with those customers across all different types of industries. So geospatial is an area that I've kind of leaned into in previous parts of my career. Before I joined Google about a year and a half ago, I worked primarily in financial services and financial technology, and using spatial analytics has become quite a good way to achieve an understanding of the financial world. As well as, in other industries. So that's a little bit about my background. And so Nathan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, Jeff. Wonderful to be speaking to you. Thanks for the opportunity. So my name is Nathan Eaton. I'm Executive Director at NGIS. So NGIS, we are a Google and Cardo partner, and really we're a dedicated geospatial company that focuses on implementing leading geospatial technology to solve really complex problems for our clients. So we work across a broad range of industries, and more recently, we've been involved in significant deployments of both Google and Cardo technology in the manufacturing and retail sector. So we do try and focus on how do we bring the best of Google and Cardo to really address the key issues and opportunities that are facing our clients globally. So yeah, great to be speaking with you, Jeff.
Yeah, likewise. So let's dig in. So maybe we can start off by just going through some of the top problem statements that you see in consumer products goods and in your work with customers. Where are people focused?
So there's a couple of key areas of focus for us at the moment with our engagement with our clients. Number one, it's taking a data-driven approach across the board, particularly using geospatial. So taking a geospatial approach to many different use cases and adopting geospatial technology to have location intelligence at the forefront of a number of different initiatives. So we're seeing that not just in the manufacturing sector, but in utilities, natural resources, environment, climate change, the importance and value of leveraging geospatial data to provide insights into your organization. So I don't think that would be particularly groundbreaking for a lot of the people attending this summit from Cardo. But for us, then probably taking that and addressing that for sustainability. So where we're seeing a strong push within the manufacturing sector currently is for sustainable supply chains and for organizations to create traceability to actually deliver on their commitments for sustainable supply chains. So we see this as a really strong area and really high value area for the use of geospatial currently, is working with organizations to allow them to basically monitor their progress towards sustainability and to remove unsustainable activities from their supply chains, which is very strong commitments from large manufacturing, large global companies into sustainable processes. And I think within that is a key problem statement. How do we make sure that our supply chains are sustainable? There's a number of layers to how you would address that. And a number of challenges, which I think Cardo and Google and a geospatial thinking are really core to. And so for large manufacturing companies, particularly the ones that we're working with, they have large, distributed and global, really complex supply chains. So the need to use geospatial capability and Google capability at cloud level to be able to scale some of the insights that they need is really an opportunity to change the way that they address their sustainability commitments. And you can see a lot of organizations have made strong commitments for sustainability, whether it's 100% deforestation-free supply chain, or whether it's 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the supply chain. A lot of fantastic commitments. It's then taking a data-driven approach to monitor progress towards those commitments and just moving the needle in terms of how they can address those. So really we're seeing sustainability and sustainable supply chains as a really key problem statement that we're working on at the moment, Jeff.
Yeah, that's super important, and thank you for kind of steering us that way. I mean, I'm personally quite interested in making sure that we develop sustainability into, or we factor sustainability into pretty much everything that we do. It's super important for Google. For example, we have last year we disclosed or announced a 24/7 carbon-free energy goal for all of Google Cloud and all of Google's operations and data centers and things like that. A huge challenge to source renewable energy throughout the grids where we operate. But the complexity of that, I think, while it's quite complex, I think the complexity of supply chains and some of the sourcing issues that you're talking about, and really keeping track of those supply chains and making sure that those supplies are sourced sustainably is equally challenging, if not more so. And so I think I would follow up with saying, like, where are you seeing some of the early signs of progress with using geospatial technology in particular to address sustainable supply chains?
Another good question, Jeff. And back to your point previously, before I get into kind of the technology and use of geospatial, I think what's really resonating with a lot of the organizations we're working with currently is a partnership approach. So it's innovation as technology, but overall, it's a partnership approach to address sustainability. I think, as you pointed out just then, Jeff, the commitment that Google has to sustainability, NGIS, we're 100% carbon neutral. So we're very much impact focused. So I think that partnership approach has been key to the success of a lot of the deployments that we've had. I think from a sustainability perspective, one of the key values for using geospatial is really when you're looking at a supply chain, one of the key things is to create traceability and transparency, but then it's all around mapping back to the footprint of activity. And that's geospatial and that's location. So there are inherently complex supply chain linkages all the way through the supply chain for large manufacturing organizations. But inevitably, they need to get down to where is the footprint of activity. So whether it is deforestation for a particular commodity, such as coffee production, or whether it's looking at greenhouse gas emissions in the meat industry and where they are occurring and where the sourcing is actually located, it's really all around that footprint. And so that's the key value for geospatial is, number one, is creating that footprint, and that can be quite complex. But then once you identify that footprint of activity, you link them through to suppliers and stakeholders. It's then monitoring activity, which for large organizations with significant supply chains, that large footprints. So depending on the commodity they're sourcing, it's likely across many different countries. And it's likely significant geographical areas that they're trying to monitor. So that's where geospatial capability, in particular the use of Cardo and Google with a cloud-first approach, is really the only way to actually monitor those footprints effectively. So the use of satellite imagery, the use of the data observatory from Cardo, bringing all these different data sets through at a global scale, and then being able to distill the really specific insights that allow you to say, well, this is our progress towards sustainability. This is the number of hectares of deforestation we've detected for this supplier. So the geospatial is really core to that full supply chain process. And it's not the only capability and technology that you need, but it's key. So I think it's really challenging if you don't have a geospatial approach to really understand your supply chain and your footprint. And I know this feeds through into a Google platform approach, which is Cardo, fantastic partner for Google, and they're deploying and really leveraging some amazing technology as part of the Google Cloud platform. They're absolutely leading when it comes to geospatial approach. But we see that GCP approach of bringing multiple technologies and having the full end-to-end workflow for organizations and through a partnership approach is really key. And I know, Jeff, based on your background and your work with Octo, I mean, you've got rich experience with implementing AI and ML solutions for clients. I mean, where do you think organizations typically go wrong with their thinking around adopting AI and ML and what they should be doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think everybody wants to, go straight for this sort of AI magic pixie dust that they can kind of sprinkle on top of things and kind of fix everything, right? But I think it really taking like that foundational approach to having, really solid computation and data storage infrastructure. That's really where it starts, and then building up layers from there into data and into analytics, and then finally to ML where it makes sense. I think a lot of times where folks go wrong when they start off with especially sort of from the CTO perspective of saying, I've got to bring in ML, I've got to bring in AI to drive drive the latest greatest, is the really focusing on the problem first, and really saying, making sure that the problem that you're trying to solve is actually appropriate for ML. Typically you need, machine learning problems that are really sort of well suited are the ones that have lots of, fairly high quality data. Oftentimes that data needs to be labeled by humans. And so if you're doing, for example, like a land cover classification on a, geospatial data set, you sort of need someone to, look at the pixels and make some amount of, kind of training data, ground truth available to kind of seed the algorithms. So, getting started with kind of, solid infrastructure and data, and finally then, humans in the loop for building the machine learning models is super important. And then the last thing I would touch on is oftentimes the expectations are misaligned around things like forecast accuracy or machine learning model accuracy. Folks will come in saying, I need something that's 99.9% accurate, so let's throw ML at that. Well, probably not the right use of technology for that. Machine learning models and prediction approaches, tend to start with lower forecast accuracy or lower model accuracy, classification accuracy, whatever ML metric you're looking at. So it's, maybe an 80% accuracy rate is actually pretty good and can, move the needle pretty significantly on the type of problem that you're trying to solve. It sort of depends, obviously, but having the right expectation around how good the model can actually get. And the implications of that would be, you need additional workflow, as you said, like you need collaboration, you need to work together to be able to interpret, what the outcomes of these machine learning predictions and so forth. Yeah. So, and then maybe I can, jump back with a question for you, which is, how do you see cloud and Google Cloud in particular, and the partners that we have, such as Cardo, really driving the next generation of geospatial platforms? Like where do you see it going, kind of in the future?
Yeah, look, we've been partners with Google for over a decade now. We're really proud partners of Cardo and what they're doing within the industry as well. And with Google, I mean, we've seen the impact that they've had in transforming geo. So from Google Earth way back circa 2000, Google Maps circa 2006, pioneers in terms of the next generation geo capability. And from us, what we're now seeing is that capability being offered to organizations, so clients that we're working with, and particularly within a cloud-first approach. So we talked around some of the challenges with global complex supply chains, large distributed footprints. Google is providing a way to address those at scale. So when we're looking at the next generation geo, it's cloud geo. And it's having high performing scalable products that allow you to take this massive funnel of information that you've got available, and we are data rich at the moment. And our opportunity and challenge is how do we turn that data into the insights that move the needle? And so Google has really what we think is next generation industry leading technology that form part of that overall geo capability and that cloud geo. So we're talking specifically around products such as Google Earth Engine. So we've been really proud partners with the Google Earth Engine team for the best part of a decade as well, which allows organizations to leverage global significant planetary data sets for satellite imagery, and to be able to distill satellite imagery products, multiple satellite imagery products, into key insights such as deforestation. And that's really a game-changing product. So we love the work that the Google Earth Outreach team is doing with Google Earth Engine. It's a really innovative product and highly applicable to global supply chains. And then BigQuery. So we're continually amazed by BigQuery in terms of the capability, particularly from a geospatial perspective, with being able to take really complex challenges that typically you'd have to focus a lot on provisioning your infrastructure and a lot of management to get to the stage where you can actually produce the insight. And BigQuery goes from 0 to 100 really quickly, right to the insight. And I think that's the approach that Google takes. So you combine Earth Engine, completely unique satellite imagery products, BigQuery, which is a data lake capability for geospatial, unrivaled, and then you put Cardo on the top to really leverage a lot of these fundamental capabilities and package them into a BI type tool. You're coming up with a really compelling platform that is a cloud native, cloud first approach that can really allow you to take a significant jump from an on-premise approach, a traditional on-prem approach, to really leveraging the best of the cloud. And for manufacturing in particular, as I mentioned before, these global footprints, that's actually what's needed. So instead of taking very small steps, you can take really large, significant steps and start to address your sustainability commitments. So, and we are partners with many different geospatial technologies and companies. We've been around for 28 years. So we're really well across the geospatial landscape, and certainly we're really excited about what we're doing with the Google ecosystem at the moment, and the likes of Cardo and partners with that next generation geospatial.
Yeah, very cool.
And a part of that, obviously, Jeff, is how AI and ML capabilities are part of that ecosystem with Google. So how do you see, with all of that, the global footprints, the need to scale, use of a lot of information, how is Google enhancing that traditional approach to the use of geospatial technology from an AI and ML perspective?
Yeah, well, I think you touched on a lot of it right there. You know, I am personally a pretty big fan of all of the tools that you mentioned, and you know, the AI ML sort of story in those tools is all about kind of taking away the heavy lifting to get to the scale that you need for global solutions, right? So, and this was really sort of intrinsic in the beginning, or the early days, in the early 2010s of the Earth Engine product, right? Which is now around 10 years old or so. You know, it was really envisioned as a way to, you know, understand and predict and then monitor deforestation. So one of the, you know, using satellite imagery and machine learning models to predict or classify, you know, the types of changes that you see in the surface of the Earth. So this work continues today, and has now gotten to the point where, you know, the ML models that are being created can be created much more quickly, much more efficiently, with, you know, larger data sets, for more accuracy and more frequent kind of understanding of how things are changing. So, and the really interesting thing is it's going from kind of the research and academic and theoretical world into sort of the corporate world, the commercial world, the industrial world, to really, you know, because the tools have gotten so much better and so much simpler and easier to use. You know, I definitely foresee a world where, you know, you don't need an advanced degree in earth science to, you know, kind of understand how location, you know, matters to your business. You know, if you're a retailer, understanding the footprint of your stores, and the relationship between your distribution centers and your store bases, or how the logistics flow through your network. If you're a consumer products goods company, understanding this, like you said before, this sourcing of the sort of base commodities, the raw ingredients of your products, all the way through your supplier network, and really, doing that for not just your own facilities, but also potentially, the industry's facilities, right? Understanding benchmarking across the competition, and sort of having these collaborative solutions where there's, a force for good, for example, removing plastic from the world, or preventing, or adding to a circular economy, preventing more plastic from being created from petroleum, right? So those are just a few of the ways I see it showing up, and I think there's a lot more kind of runway. And maybe what I can go to next is a question for you about, how do you, I think you touched on it a little bit before, but if you could go a little deeper into the role of Cardo itself in the geospatial platform, how does Cardo kind of fit in?
Yeah, we are attaching Cardo to Google because it's very much part of the Google ecosystem. Fantastic Google partner, fantastic partner for us. I think Cardo really aligns with the Google approach of spending more time on insights and more time on using the data and less time on managing your infrastructure. So where we're having fantastic success with Cardo is then taking that significant jump from data sources to insights. So, and Cardo is an amazing tool as a presentation layer, as an analysis layer, to actually be able to package some of the applications that are required from a sustainability perspective to actually showcase progress towards sustainability. So if we're looking at Cardo specifically with its capability, we see it as a fantastic geo-driven BI tool. So there's quite a few different BI tools available to provide capability for organizations, but the vast majority are very thin when it comes to geospatial capability. And we think that leaves a fair bit on the table with insights and functionality that really can deliver high value to organizations. So Cardo makes the most of that. So it's a geo-driven BI tool that allows you to really pick apart the location aspects. And from a supply chain, when you're looking at scenarios, when you're looking at catchment areas for different suppliers, when you're engaging with stakeholders, that geo-driven BI approach is hugely important and valuable. We're a bit biased because we're a geospatial company, but we've seen the value of a geo approach. And then Cardo with its capability, it also allows you to start layering your information on top of Google Maps. It's as simple as that sounds, that's significant value in terms of when you're trying to present your information back to your internal users and to external stakeholders. So you get the fantastic Google data coming through, the Google base map and all the different API capability from places and whatnot. But then it's the location-specific information for an organization. That's where you start to get significant value. So it's an organization-specific supply chain. And you're starting to use Cardo as the key glue that can then bring forward insights and attach it to that supply chain. And a lot of these inferences that you may have for a supply chain, some of them are black and white and confirmed, and some of them you're actually creating inference based on location, based on proximity, based on location information, movement data. You're inferring supply chain linkages and creating that transparency, which is it's a really strong focus for Cardo. So Cardo within that, so you've got a cloud native approach. If you haven't seen the work, we probably won't have time to go through it all today, but Cardo's work with BigQuery is amazing. Yeah, so we're big fans of BigQuery. We've already talked around that, but the tiling approach that they're doing, how they're leveraging BigQuery capability for geo analysis and visualization at scale is crazy. So I really recommend anyone going through and checking out the Cardo site and the work that they're doing, the BigQuery tiler. So we're really excited about using that for clients. And then the visualization aspect, Cardo is an amazing product and we use it as our go-to for visualizing sustainable supply chains for retail applications. Its capabilities with DeckGL, React, different capabilities allow us to put together the tools that our clients are really asking for. So Cardo is key part of that, that whole Google ecosystem and that end-to-end deployment for us, Jeff.
Yeah. Two things there that really stand out. The BigQuery visualization tool, the Tyler, I saw an early demo of that and was just blown away. Like just the ability to kind of like, see a map that has, many hundreds of millions of data points and really zoom in to, individual locations and kind of do that in a very fluid way. I remember tackling that exact same problem in probably around 2014, and it was very difficult at the time.
Yeah.
And we're making it, Cardo is making it so much easier. And then the open source approach with DeckGL, I think, is fantastic. Bringing this technology really to to the open source realm, I think is great as well. And then so what are some challenges that you see to kind of adopting some of this stuff? I think we've touched on a few of these before in terms of technology approach, but like what are sort of the main headwinds that folks in CPG and retail kind of experience when they're just starting out to adopt geospatial technology?
Good question. And for us, with some of the solutions we've deployed, we've brought a lot of different players and capabilities into the overall solution. So our role is to really architect the solutions and help bring all those pieces together as really the solution delivery glue, if you like. So it's the partnership approach where we've seen the biggest impact and success. It's taking that partnership approach and working together. It is for large manufacturing organizations, it's adopting cloud, simple as that sounds, but taking a cloud-first mindset. So not trying to do what you've always done previously the same way in the cloud. It's going from maybe an on-prem solution, but then going, well, this is how Google does it in the cloud. This is best practice for how you can really make the most of Google services and Google Cloud Platform environment, and starting there and kind of working your way back as part of the change management exercise. But that cloud-first approach has been a key challenge, and it is a change management challenge, but it's key to be able to deliver on some of these commitments. And as I mentioned before, it's the opportunity and challenge of data, taking the data that's available from NASA and the European Space Agency from a satellite perspective, from the data observatory, such as people movement data from Cardo. It's taking all of these fantastic data sources, but then turning them into insights of value. So I think that's one of the key challenges, particularly with mapping the supply chain for sustainability purposes, which is quite a challenging process. So mapping the supply chain for some organizations will be something that they'll need to tackle and will be very complex because of the potential lack of transparency currently with the supply chain. But the value that you get with mapping that supply chain down to your footprint and being able to basically report on your progress for your sustainability commitments is the prize, if you like. And then probably the one that we take for granted a bit with all our work with Cardo and Google is the value of engaging with stakeholders. So, and that's where a geo approach is just so valuable. So the likes of Cardo and Google together really allow you to engage effectively with stakeholders to communicate their progress, their activities within sustainability. So that whole end-to-end adoption of cloud, leveraging data, complex supply chains, but then presenting to your internal, external stakeholders. I think that's the challenge and opportunity. And I know we're running out of time, Jeff. Sorry, I've been talking too much again.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm keen, just to finish up with, if you don't mind, I'm really keen to know about what's the roadmap for AI and ML at Google. I know you're kind of in the center of it. Is there anything you can kind of share?
Yeah, well, so I pointed to a couple of things. First would be we're going to continue to have an industry-specific solution approach as part of our the way we think about cloud, right? If you think about the beginning of cloud, it was infrastructure as a service and data tools, almost kind of like renting servers for a while. Those capabilities have gotten further and further progressed up to the point where now we have things like our retail search AI solution and sort of product discovery tools that are really based on AI and machine learning for a retailer point of view. And I think we'll continue to produce these kinds of industry specific solutions and building blocks for key industries that we focus on. And then the second thing I would point to is the increase of creating and enhancing the Google Cloud AI platform. And this is a tool set for data scientists, for machine learning engineers, for teams around machine learning to really both leverage existing machine learning models, use something called AutoML, which is a sort of a fast path to building custom machine learning models, and then really, create really sophisticated models, if you need to bring in things like GPUs or other, advanced kind of accelerators for machine learning hardware, train, models at scale repeatedly, and then really put those models into production where they can be the most useful. And so this is a process that we call ML ops, or machine learning ops. And so there's a lot of focus on, observability and understanding how these models are performing in production, such that you can, continuously improve them. You can retrain your models on a periodic basis, for example. And then the last thing I would touch on is the approach that we call responsible AI, making sure that your machine learning models and your AI approach is following, a principled method to, make sure that there's no bias, or that you can eliminate bias in both your data and your machine learning approach, and also have a human-centered focus on the outcomes, right? To make sure that the AI ML solutions that you're delivering really are kind of creating positive benefits for society. And I would say that sustainability is to the heart of that mission, right? As we talked about quite a lot today. So anything to close out the conversation today? It's been really, really enjoyable so far.
No, it's been fantastic. It's been great to have a chat with you, Jeff. You're a gentleman and a scholar, so yeah, thanks for taking the time. And yeah, that focus on sustainability is, I think, really core in terms of what's come out of the conversation today. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to have the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the summit, folks, and we'll see you next time.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.